Good morning.
Morning.
Baruch Hashem, we have many life cycle events throughout the Jewish year, the Jewish home. I wanted to focus on the inyan of Shalom Zachar. We know that when a baby boy is born, the first Shabbos of their life, at least Ashkenazim have the minhag to get together after the Friday night Suda, and they have something to eat and they sing. And it's a celebration. Right? The simple, straightforward understanding of a Shalom Zachar is that it's a celebration. Now, there are two main questions. Maybe we'll say three main questions. First of all, where does this come from? Where does the idea of a Shalom Zachar come from? Question number two, why is it dafka on Shabbos that we're celebrating the birth of this baby boy? And question number three, why do we only have a celebration of birth for a boy and not for a girl? Right, so where does this idea come from? The minhag we find that goes back hundreds of years. Why is it dafka on Shabbos? And why is it dafka for boys? Now there is a Gemara in Baba Kama. It says, Rab and Shmuel, Rav Asi, they gathered together lebei Shavua Haben, to celebrate Shavua Haben. What does that mean? Literally, the week of the sun. So Rashi says, Bris Mila, al Shem She'overu Olav, Shiva Yomim. It means they got together for a Bris Mila. And it's called Shavua Haben because it's been 7 days, more than 7 days, since the child was born. V'omri le lebei Yeshua Haben. And others say that Rab and Shmuel and Rav Asi were not gathered together for a bris, but they were celebrating Yeshua Haben. Sounds very Christian, right? Yeshua Haben literally means the salvation of the son. So Rashi says, Mishta she'osin lepidyon haben, haben b'chor. It means they were getting together for a celebration of Pidyon Haben. The language of Yeshua is referring to Pidyon Haben. Tosas, however, disagrees. Tosas quotes Rashi, who says that Yeshua Haben means a celebration of Pidyon Haben, which, by the way, parenthetically, is on the what day of the child's life? The 31st. Right? One of those things that it's 31st day of the child's life after going through an entire Shloshim Yom, then we have Pidyon Haben. But Tosfos says that can't be what the Gemara is talking about here, because generally the Aramaic translation for Pidyon Haben is Purkan. It wouldn't use a lashon of Yeshua Haben. Rather, it's referring to a different celebration. He quotes the Shita of the Rebbeinu Tam, who says, Shenola d'sham ben, v'al shem shehula nosha v'nimlat mimei imo. The fact that a son was born, and he was saved, meaning that he survived the ordeal of childbirth, that was the celebration. V'hoyu regilim laso suda. And they had the custom to make a suda in celebration of the child coming out from his mother's womb. So according to Tosfos, this language of Yeshua Haben is celebration of the birth of a boy. Okay. Comes along the Trumas Hadeshin, and he says, D'mashanu nogim achshav, we have a custom that after a boy is born, nichnasin l'sham litom belel Shabbos hasamach leleida, we all get together on the night of Shabbos that's right after his birth, v'hi sudas mitzvah, and we view this gathering as a sudas mitzvah. Where does the minhag come from? So says the Trumas Hadeshin, it comes from this interpretation of the Gemara in Baba Kama. When the Gemara says that Rav and Shmuel Ravasi got together, according to some, they were gathering Lebei Yeshua Habein, and according to Tosos, that means they were celebrating the birth of a baby boy. That's where the minig of Shalom Zachar comes from. Now, according to the Trumas Hadeshin, again, we had three questions. What is the source of Shalom Zachar? What's that?
In the Trumas Hadeshin,
Perish Rach. Different girsas, Rach, Rabbeinu Tam. The first question of what the source of this custom comes from, where does it come from? Okay, we have a Gemara in Baba Kama. However, it's not answering the second question. Why is it dafka for a boy and not for a girl? And why is it dafka on Shabbos? And the Trumas Hadeshin does say the whole Shabbos thing is somewhat, it's a practical consideration. The kovo belele Shabbos b'shasha kol mitzir b'betehem. The minig was established that we should get together to celebrate the birth of a boy on Shabbos because people are home, people are around.
It's a Sudas mitzvah, though, he's saying?
But it sounds like he's saying it's a Sudas mitzvah. And even though he's also clearly saying you don't have to wash, he says that nichnasin l'sham litom belel Shabbos te'ima. Okay. Good questions. Comes along the Noda B'Yehuda in the Dagomir Avava. It's a good question. So the short answer is no, but it's a good question. Says the Noda B'Yehuda in the Dagomir Avava, Madu'e nosim suda avsha noledes nekeva. If the whole reason, according to the Trumas Hadeshin, is based on the Gemara in Baba Kama, that we're celebrating the birth of this little boy, so then we should celebrate when a girl is born as well. Halo afhi nimlata mimeima. It's the same exact reason for celebration. Baruch Hashem, they made it through childbirth. So why would it be unique to a baby boy? That's the question of the Noda B'Yehuda on the reason given by the Trumas Hadeshin. Now, if you take a look in the Ramah, Yeridea Reish Samech Hey, the Ramah here in the very end of Sif Yud Beis writes, Belel Shabbos la'achar shenolad Zachar nichnasem eitz latinik litom sham v'hu gam kein sudas mitzvah. The Ramah is paraphrasing the words of the Trumas Hadeshin, that when a baby boy is born, we gather together and we have a little something to eat, and that's a sudas mitzvah. If you look at the Taz in the top right,
is it saying that the Tinuk should be there?
The Trumas Hadeshin didn't say that.
Oh, that's a good point, right? Good. Okay. Now, if you look at the Lashon of the Trumas Hadeshin, he says, Nichnasin l'sham. He doesn't spell out Eitzel HaTinuk, and the Ramah is spelling that out, but okay, I hear.
The Tinuk's usually not there.
Well, it depends, meaning there, meaning in the house. Lav dafka, it means, yeah, okay. Well, we'll have to see, based on the reasons of the Taz, if it would be reasonable to assume that the Tinuk should be there. But the language of the Ramah is definitely pointing that out, that it sounds like it's at least ideal for the child to be there. So, regarding the source of this minig, the Taz comes along and he first quotes the Trumas Hadeshin that we saw. And then he says in the third line, V'risi smach acher lezeh medrash Rabbah. I've seen another potential source of this custom from the Medrash Rabbah in Parshas Emor. Rabbi Levi Amar Mashal HaMelech Shegazer V'amar Kol Nichnasin Sheyesh Kol Achsanyin Sheyesh Kan Lo Yiru Panai Ad Sheyiru Panei Matrona Techila. The king made a decree that all of the people coming and visiting, they should not appear before me before seeing the matrona, the queen. They have to see the queen first. So the nimshal is, Kach Amra Kadosh Baruch Hu, Lo Taviu Lefanai Karban, Ad Shetavra Lov Shabbos. You should not bring a carbon until this behema passes through a Shabbos. Shein shiva yomim below Shabbos. So once you have the animal alive for an entire week, so then it goes through a Shabbos. Ve'ein mila below Shabbos, and the same thing is true regarding bris mila, that the mila should not take place without a Shabbos. So this seems like a second reason or a second source for the minig opinion of Shalom Zachar, that there seems to be a connection between bringing a carbon and bris mila, and we do find that in Chazal. We actually mentioned the reason why we paskin during the 3 weeks in Sfiras Omer that the Balei Bris are allowed to shave for a bris, but we don't find that same heter for Pidyon Haben, is because a bris is viewed conceptually like a hakarova. It's a carbon. It's a higher level of avoda, a higher level of simcha. So we see a connection from this Chazal that just like when bringing a carbon, it has to go through a Shabbos, the same thing when it comes to bris milah, there has to be a Shabbos before the bris. Not explaining why is there a need for the Shabbos before the bris, not explaining why we're celebrating something on Shabbos.
You have a bris on Shabbos?
Ooh, that's a good question. I know someone who had a bris on Shabbos. You know who that was? You. I remember that. Yes, good question. Okay, so we're going to analyze this second reason of the Taz a little bit more carefully. And now he seems to bring a third reason or a third source, quoting from the Drisha, from the Rekanti. It says, Ma shenogim b'Shabbos levaker eitzel hatinuk hanolad. That which we have the custom to go by the child, shehu ovil al teraso sheshachach. This might be the most well-known source, that because the child is mourning the Torah that he lost, all of the Torah he learned from the Malach b'meimo, and then when he comes out of the womb, all of that Torah is forgotten, at least consciously. So there's an avelus here, so we're going to be menachem oval.
It basically said that when you're not birthed, that means that you know all the mitzvahs, but then when you come out, you don't know.
Exactly.
Is that only a male?
Okay, so that's a good question. Is this only true for a boy who has the mitzvah of Talmud Torah? Okay. If it is, that would answer why we only have a Shalom Zachar for a boy and not for a girl. What was that?
There's no need from Avelim or Shabbos.
Right. So this whole concept is very difficult. We don't have Nichum Avelim and Shabbos. And the whole notion of the little boy being an Avelis is a very strange concept. So we have 3 ideas altogether. Our job is to explore them and understand where this is coming from. We have the Trumas Hadeshed who says it's based on that Gemara in Baba Kama, celebrating the fact that the boy survived childbirth. We have the second pshat of the Taz, which is from the Medrash Rabbah. Just like a carbon has to experience a Shabbos before the Hakrava, a child has to experience Shabbos, a boy has to go through Shabbos before the bris. And then we have this third pshat that he's bringing from the Drisha, B'Shem the Rekanti, that it's some level of nichum avelim for the child sheshachach teraso.
The third shot seems to be that the child should be.
Well, yeah, according to the third pshat, it definitely makes sense as to why he says levaker eitzel hatinuk hanolad, because it sounds like the nichum avelim is for the child. There's a lot that needs to be explained. Okay, we have a Medrash Rabbah in the Varim. Lama hatinok nimo l'shmona yamim. We have different chazal that speak about the significance of the Milah taking place on the 8th day. And here, Medrash Rabbah says, Shenasan l'kodesh baruch hu rachamim olav lahamtin lo ad sheyeo bo kocho. HaKadosh Baruch Hu waited till the 8th day in order for the child to have the strength to endure the bris. So now we have an interesting little review of the history of vitamin K. Vitamin K is a vitamin that's essential for blood clotting. It helps activate clotting factors in the liver, which are crucial for stopping bleeding. When was vitamin K discovered? Discovered in the 1930s, and then in 1943, the two researchers who discovered and elucidated the chemical structure of vitamin K, they were awarded the Nobel Prize in Medicine. And then what they found out subsequently, and this is now in the 1960s, that studies showed that a baby's natural clotting ability steadily rises after birth, peaking at day 8. Levels of vitamin K and clotting factors all rise together, naturally reducing the risk of bleeding. Here's a quote from 1963.
Are they allowed to?
One second, I want to hear the quote over here. It appears that an 8-day-old baby has more available vitamin K than any other day in his entire life. Subsequent research into newborn has shown that a baby's clotting ability fluctuates significantly during their first week. Here's from the Journal of Pediatric Urology, that at birth, babies are born with low stores of vitamin K. From days 2 to 3, then the clotting factors, they drop to their lowest point. And then on day 8, all right, the magic day 8, their levels surge, often reaching or exceeding 100% of normal adult levels for the first and only time in the child's life without medical intervention. So there is something incredible about the 8th day after birth regarding vitamin K, which is the factor that would allow for a safe circumcision. Now, I was curious. I went into AI and I said, how is it possible that the ancient Hebrews, going back 3,000-4,000 years ago, were aware of the fact that on day 8 there was something special regarding the safety of a child for circumcision? It's a good question, right? So the first answer was, it's likely there could have been some form of divine revelation. Okay?
I was assuming they were aware.
What?
Maybe they weren't. They just did the mitzvah anyways.
I said maybe it's a coincidence. Maybe.
Saying that
Probably not.
it's from Hashem. It's a mitzvah.
100%, yes. Meaning, Lamaisa, this is one of the incredible insights that we've discovered only in the last century. And I'm sure as we find out more about how the world works, we discover more and more of the truth of the mitzvos. But it is an incredible idea that on day 8, you have the more than 100% of normal adult levels for vitamin K, allowing for the safety of a circumcision. Now, the Orach Chaim, in the beginning of Parshas Tazria, he quotes this Chazal, that Lama Tinuk Nimul Lishmona, and Pshat is because Hashem had rachamim on the child, that he wanted to wait ad sheyiyeh bo koach. And then the Orach Chaim says, V'tzorech ledas, mi gila sod zeh ki b'shmona yomim yiyeh bo koach, lo pochos v'lo yoser. Who revealed to us this incredible secret that on the 8th day, they have this particular koach? Lo pachos, not on day 7, not on day 9, but dafka day 8. Meaning Chazal, they're telling us that day 8 is the zman where the child has the koach to endure the bris. So says the Orach Chaim HaKadosh, V'nira, ki koach ha'omor b'divrayim hu mash omor b'zohar. The koach that the Medrash Rabbah is referring to is based on what the Zohar teaches us. Shehu kedei sheyaver alav Shabbos v'tagiyehu nefesh hachionis hanishpas b'olam b'yom Shabbos ki yadua. Something very special happens on Shabbos. On Shabbos, there's this infusion of spirituality, and that is true on every Shabbos. That is the Metzias, that's the reality of what Shabbos is. V'oziyah ben kayama. And then the impact of Shabbos on a newborn child is that when the child goes through Shabbos, it's now had this infusion of ruchnius, this koach that the Chazal is referring to, and now a baby boy is ready for his bris. Now it's actually interesting, we spoke about in Shvi Shel Pesach, we mentioned from the Alshich, and it works out well because we said that 2 out of the 6 or so names that we attach the title HaKadosh to are the Orach Chaim HaKadosh and the Alshich HaKadosh, right? So the Alshich says that there are 2 primary days of creation, day 1 and day 7. Day 1 is Brias Olam Yesh Me'ayin. That was the creation of the entire universe. What took place on day 7? So up until day 7, we had the world, but it was more in the bechina of a guf. It was everything in its physical stature. However, Chazal tell us that there was one thing the world was lacking, and that was menucha. Ba Shabbos, bas menucha. When Shabbos arrived, meaning the 7th day, then we had this new idea that we call menucha. Says the Alshich, menucha doesn't just mean that there's no longer malacha happening and therefore it's more of a restful atmosphere, but rather menucha means there was actually this infusion of neshama, this koach that was given into the world, and that's what happens in every Yom HaShvi. There's this Shabbos v'yinafash. There's a feeling of real ruchnius. That, says the Orach Chaim, that's the koach that Chazal were aware of, and that's how they knew that day 8 was special. Meaning, obviously, the pasuk says biyom hashmini. So Kadosh Baruch Hu is telling us the mitzvah is on the 8th day. I think what the Orach Chaim was asking is, but how did Chazal know that what's special about the 8th day is the fact that the child has this added koach? So to that, the Orach Chaim is answering, because if it's the 8th day, it goes through a Shabbos. Now I'm going to guess both of your questions, and you'll tell me if I'm right. So why not just have a bris right after Shabbos, whenever that is? Was that your question, Howard? Okay. That was your question also. Good question. Everybody else got a different question?
Variation.
Okay.
This Hezbollah does not say that there's something special on 8th day your vitamin K goes to. It's saying that when you have an 8th day, you will be guaranteed to have a shot. The law doctor that number 8 is a magic number.
Oh, so, right, a variation of the same question. Now, what the Orach Chaim though is asking, to really appreciate just the question and the answer, the Orach Chaim is asking, Tzarich Ladas, Migila Sodze, Ki Bishmona Yamim Yiyeh Bo Koach, Lo Pachos V'Lo Yoser. The assumption of the Orach Chaim is that when Chazal say B'Yom Hashmini, at that point there's a koach, it means that there is something special about Yom Hashmini. Okay, so how's he answering that question by saying, well, as long as the child goes through a Shabbos, it sounds like all the child needs is a Shabbos. So, but it sounds like, and this is what many of the Svarim say, is that the koach of Shabbos is only through the hashlama of having an entire week. Sheishis Yamim is somehow needed for Ubiyom Hashvi. There's a requirement to have this kedusha, this shefa, this power of Shabbos to really have the impact on the human soul and the human body, is when there's an entire week. There's a whole system of Sheishis Yamim and then Shabbos. Once you go through that entire week, then you're ready b'Yom Hashmini.
If you want to have exactly what you just said, you have to wait for like the 6 days and then Shabbos.
After the 6 days.
You're mixing up the ordinance with like we have Shabbos in there
Oh.
and 6 days in there.
Ayin Shom V'du Ketiv. Yes. The Yesod, though, is absolutely incredible. We see there's something special about day 8, and the Orach Chaim is telling us the reason why we know that Chazal knew that there was a koach on day 8 is based on our understanding of the koach of Shabbos. That's what the Orach Chaim is saying, without getting too much into the weeds. That's the construct here. which is absolutely incredible.
We're thinking both this day 8 aspect and the vitamin K aspect. How does never push forward?
And what's the V'lo Yoser? So then how does a kid ever survive a bris after day 8?
How do we ever say like, oh,
Okay, so practically, it's a good question. Practically speaking, we know that after day 8, the vitamin K levels don't drop down to what they were on day 2 and 3. L'maisa, it's safe for a child after day 8 as well. What's clear from the research and what Chazal is telling us, there's something special about day 8. And l'maisa, I think it's important to note that for all tamei hamitzvos, the idea here is not to understand the entirety of the mitzvah through any one particular lens. And it could even be that Chazal is not referring to vitamin K b'chlal, right? We don't know. But it's a very inspiring and interesting coincidence that on day 8, the child is most ready for this type of procedure. Okay, but I want to now just finish up the thought. So the Taz quoted the Medrash Rabbah. The Taz said that maybe the source of the minig of Shalom Zachar is based on the Medrash Rabbah in Vayikra, where just like the king will tell those visiting him, you have to first see the queen, and only then you're going to be ready to see me. So Kodesh Baruch Hu said the same thing regarding karbanos, that an animal has to go through Shabbos meaning the kala, the queen, and the same thing is true for Mila. Ve'ein Mila below Shabbos. According to the Orach Chaim, we understand this Medrash Rabbah in a little bit of a deeper way now. Ein Mila below Shabbos it's not just a superimposed requirement. By the way, before you do this mitzvah of Mila, you also have to do this mitzvah of Shabbos. What's happening is that the Shabbos itself is preparing the child for the bris. And based on that, the idea of a celebration of Shalom Zachar is very, very understandable. In the Tamei Menhagim, he brings from the Sefer of Avodas Yisrael, who says that if Shabbos is the hachana, Shabbos is the preparation for the bris, so then the reason why we're getting together and we're celebrating with the mishpacha and with the child is because we're looking forward to the bris, and we understand and we appreciate that it's this moment, it's this Shabbos that's giving the child what he needs to go through that bris. Which is,
We had another one come who said, Friday night's community because people are there. According to this, it's totally different.
right, meaning that when the Trumas Hadeshin, the first idea that was quoted in the Taz, right, the Trumas Hadeshin said, it's based on the Gemara in Baba Kama. They were getting together because they were celebrating the boy made it through childbirth. Now, according to that, we didn't have a real understanding, a deeper understanding as to why it ties into Shabbos. The Trumas Hadeshin said it could just be, it was a practical consideration that people are more available. What the Avodas Yisrael, though, is adding is that according to this notion, which is the second shot in the Taz, which the Orach Chaim explains beautifully, is that it's very, very understandable as to why we're celebrating on the Shabbos prior to the bris. What that also explains...
Boy. It's only for a boy.
Exactly. Right? Why do we only have a Shalom Zachar for a boy? Why not something equivalent for a girl? And the answer is, well, if we're not just celebrating the fact that the child made it through childbirth, but we're celebrating that it's this moment in Shabbos that's enabling the child to go through the bris, obviously that's only true for a boy, and that also answers why the celebration is on Shabbos.
That also, according to this also, the child doesn't have to be there. Why would the child have to be there? Per se. I'm saying, according to this pshat.
Yeah, you could hear it still. It's a nice thing if the child's there. We're celebrating with the child. He's the cheftze shel mitzvah, so to speak. But yeah, it would seem to be less of a consideration. Now, yes. Okay, now that's a great question. Yitzchak is asking, why Dafka Friday night? Meaning in the structure of the Orach Chaim, we understand we're celebrating Shabbos prior to the bris, but why dafka Friday night? So this is where a little Kabbalah is required. And this is what the Avodas Yisrael spells out. Take a look at source number 9. He says it's Muchrach Kedas HaMekubolim Shebelel Shabbos Hu Sudosa Dachakal Tapuchin Kadishin. Oh, now we're talking. Whenever you discuss fields of holy apples, you know we're getting deep, right? So this is a Kabbalistic concept that's well above most of you here, perhaps with the exception of Dr. Sloan, maybe Howard, I don't know, a few people, but it seems like there's a unique shefa that comes into the world in the beginning of Shabbos that's part of that Leil Shabbos, that Suda of Leil Shabbos. There's something within that Friday night experience that has even a deeper, more penetrating ability to like infuse this Kedusha of Shabbos. Now there is something that, even though it's true in Halacha, Shabbos day, right, is more of a chashuv Suda than Friday night. If you only have a few nice dishes and you really want to save them for one of the 2 Sudas in Shabbos, the halach would be save it for Shabbos day. That's the Ikr Suda. L'maisa, there is something though that we could all feel, that something special about Friday night. Now, are we feeling this idea of the Sudasa, the Chalkal, Tepuch, and Kedishin? I don't know. But the Avodas Yisrael says that because we're celebrating the Shefa, the Koach that's infused within the Shabbos, allowing this child to be ready for the bris, and the Iker Shefa is happening at Friday night, right by the Suda, after the Suda, in that time frame, that's why it's appropriate to have the Shalom Zachar Friday night. Azoy shtei.
This, according to this, it seems to sound like it should be a Suda Zachar. He says, if you don't, not just Litain Midi, it sounds like it should be more of a...
And there could be different minhagim, but the general idea, though, is the same.
Why can't you say more Litvish and just say Zrizim Makim in the mitzvahs?
Well, that's way too Litvish.
Why are you Suda in the day?
I don't know, what's that?
Why is the Ikr Suda in the day?
We'll have to approach that sugya when we get there. Now, I do want to address briefly the third reason of the Taz, because the third reason of the Taz is likely the most well-known, but it's also the least understood. We're gathering together to be Menachem Avol for the child because he lost his Torah. According to the first reason, the Trumas Hadeshin, this is like the exact opposite of Nichem Avelim. We're celebrating the fact that Baruch Hashem, you made it through that whole childbirth process alive. And according to the first pshat in the Taz, or call the second pshat in the Taz, the Avodas Yisrael, we're celebrating the fact that now we're in Shabbos and this is going to be the preparation needed to allow you to go through the bris. So in those first 2 interpretations, it's only joy. To say in this third interpretation that somehow it's Nichum Avelim, not only is it very difficult to understand how that applies to a baby, but what we're doing here, we're gathering together and we're eating, generally speaking, good food, and we're singing Zmiros, which I do want to say parenthetically, whenever we discuss any hashkaf of a life cycle event, it's so important not just to know some of these concepts conceptually, but to bring it with us when we're actually participating in that life cycle event. If my whole relationship to a Shalom Zachar is, I go to this guy's house because I know they're getting together, and I spend the whole time schmoozing with my 3 friends drinking beer while everyone else is singing, I likely am not contributing to what the Shalom Zachar is all about. The idea is we're here together and there is a simcha, and I want to participate in that simcha. I don't want to use this as a form of consumption. I think it's a very important concept to always bring the ideas and the theories with us into the reality of life. But this third idea is very difficult. But I want to suggest the following. I want to suggest that this third idea does not stand alone. The notion of we're gathering together for Nichum Avelim of the child is not a pshat unto itself. It's an additional concept. And that's we have arbis, right, the food of Avelim, but we're also drinking and singing and celebrating. So it could very well be that this idea of Avelus is not a totally separate reason why we have Shalom Zachar, but it's an added dimension. And there's a chazal we find in this week's Parsha, which I think gives us a little bit of an insight into how maybe the two interpretations go together. This is on page 5, number 11. There's a Medrash Tanchuma rather, that speaks about Achilles Hager. Achilles was the nephew of Andrinus, and Achilles wanted to convert to Yiddishkeit because he was very inspired by Torah and he wanted to learn more. So Andrinus, his uncle, said to him, okay, that's fine. You want to explore this wisdom, so go ahead and explore it. But don't go through the whole circumcision thing. So Achilles said back to his uncle, that's not a possible option. Because Torah is a matana. Torah is not like any other form of wisdom where it doesn't depend on who I am spiritually. It's based on my intellectual abilities, my memory, my education. Torah is different. Torah is a matana, especially Torah Shebal Peh. And in order to be the recipient of that matana, Achilles was telling his uncle, there has to be this ruchnius component that could only be accomplished through limud haTorah, through the milah. So just focusing on the words of this Medrash Tanchuma, what we see is that the mitzvah of bris is not just a mitzvah. It's bringing us into the covenant of Avram Avinu, and that's something to explore unto itself, what exactly that means. What's the status of a child before the milah? Is he Jewish? Is he not Jewish? We'll leave that for now. But there's obviously something very significant taking place. And then the result of this milah is now that I am mol, that I went through the bris, there is a different mitzias. There is a different depth within me that can allow me to learn Torah in a way that I would never have been able to prior to the bris. So Achilles, we don't know that much about him, but it could very well be he was a brilliant guy, and he could sit down and learn for hours and gain a lot of information. But what he understood is that there's so much more to the absorption and the kinyan of Torah than having a good mind or a good memory. There's something about the neshama, and that's why he knew that he needed the bris to be able to learn Torah and to have a kinyan haTorah.
Is that good for the nechama for the baby? That by getting the bris, now they'll be able to get back to Torah that they lost.
So this is, don't steal my thunder. This is what I wanted to suggest.
It could be a girl also lost it, but they don't need that
Set
same.
it up.
Oh no! I listen. I don't give you the credit for that. That's I handed it to you on a silver platter.
So it could be the girl lost it also, which doesn't need the same.
Exactly. It could very well be that a little baby girl also learns Kol HaTorah Kula B'mei Ima, and it's lost as well. However, a boy has something special that a girl doesn't have, which is you have a chiyuv Talmud Torah. And if we're assuming that this third interpretation of the Taz is not an idea in a vacuum, we're getting together Friday night because we're all mourning that there was a birth of a child and we're coming to comfort you because you lost your Torah. No, there's a lot more happening here. We're getting together because we're celebrating. We're celebrating that Baruch Hashem, you're alive and well. We're celebrating the fact that we're looking forward to the bris. And we also understand that the Torah you lost is only able to be regained through the bris. And Shabbos, we know, is the hachana. This is the necessary preparation to get you to that point. So it could very well be, of course, there's an element of nichum avelim, but it doesn't mean it should be a somber, mournful experience. Overall, this is joyous. Overall, it's a Sudas mitzvah. Overall, we're singing and we're drinking beer, and I'm enjoying the garbanzo beans, and that's good. I shouldn't feel guilty. The nichum is that it's through this. It's through this Shabbos. It's through this Shabbos that's preparing you for the bris that you're going to be able to get back that Torah. But I think that Tzad Shava, right, the common theme that we see here is that the Shabbos before bris, we have sources now, we have an understanding why it's a Shabbos celebration. We have the Trumas Hadeshin, who says, practically speaking, people are around then, and then we have the Avodas Yisrael, the Orach Chaim, and now we have this third idea, but we're getting together on Shabbos because this is your preparation for the bris. You need this to be able to go through the bris, and the result of going through the bris is you will now be a kibul. You'll be able to learn Torah and regain all of that incredible chachma that was lost when you came into this world.
According to the minute, if the baby's not there, do we still do a Shalom Zachar?
We still do a Shalom Zachar. Yes.
And is there a bigger need to do it in the house where the baby is? If the baby is there, like some people will do it out of their house, they'll do it in the shul, they'll do it. Is there a bigger Indian to do it where the baby is?
So it's a good question. Is it ideal to do it where the baby is? When you read the wording of the Ramah and the wording of the Rekanti that the Drisha quotes, they definitely do point out Eitzel Hatinu Kanolad. All right, so it sounds like it is Lechatchila, but if there are other factors, we have to consider other factors as well. Okay, Rabbi Light, have a great day.
So what's the learning of it? If the baby didn't have a bris when it's inside?